Well, my name is Mike Scott. I was born here in Haleyville and grew up here. The young part of my life I spent here, and I am here today because my father was Coach Herman Bubba Scott, who coached here at Haleyville for a number of years, and I would like to talk a little bit about the mark that this community made on our family and what it did for us and being involved in athletics here. It's quite a story, and I'm very proud of to say that I am from Haleyville and that the impact that it made on my family and on my life. The one thing I would like to acknowledge is that while there's a lot of talk about the success that went on athletically while my dad was coaching here, the thing that I would like to highlight is the impact that the community made on us, and the just what a wonderful outpouring of love and support that was there for us during those years. And I think about the people that I know were contributors and supporters to the success of that program. I think about people like Earl Frank Walker, who were highly involved and supported my dad when he was here. There were whole entire families of people, the Dobbs family, the Whitt family made just a significant impact on us, the Robies. One thing I'd like to talk a little bit about is that my mom, that she used to tell the story and joked that she was fortunate enough to be employed by Alabama Power Company here in Haleyville, and was given her first job by Mr. W.W. Whitt, who was the local manager of Alabama Power here. And what she always said was that it was fortunate that Alabama Power gave her a job, because that allowed my father to afford to be a coach. And that was something that where really the entire community rallied around in every way to support them and to support the programs. The players that came out of that era were always remained very loyal to my dad. He received a number of honors through the years, but he always looked back to his time at Haleyville and the support that he received from this community as being just a significant part of his success. And that support went on even after we left. This community held a special place to us. I would also like to mention that Mr. Harvey, who was the principal back at that time, gave total support to those programs, and Boyce Albright, who was just a remarkable man and also had tremendous contributions to that. I would like to say too that just the businesses that were involved in it and the support that they gave the program, the churches were involved. I can remember that one of the things that my dad always insisted on was having his players go around, and they would visit in each one of the local churches around town, and that all of that was to show that every piece of the community was a part of the support structure that led to the success of that program. And it was no one person. It was he would be the first to tell you it certainly wasn't just the coach, and that the players that he had and the quality of the individuals that played for him here in Haleyville was just outstanding. And that is really what led to the success of the community.
My name is Al Scott. My dad was Bubba Scott. He passed away 4 years ago. I was born in Haleyville. We moved from here when I was 7 years old, so I may not have much perspective on how athletics has impacted Haleyville over the years, but I do have perspective as to how athletics in Haleyville impacted my dad. While he was here, it was certainly a golden time. I think everything came together during those years that allowed for a lot of great success. He had tremendous support from the community. He had a tremendous collection of athletes, and he had full support of the parents within the community that allowed them to win championships, 4 state championships, I think, over a 10-year period. Lose only 1 game the last 5 years he coached. But the story of my dad is, and the history of that, is kind of interesting when you think about it. My dad was the first person in his family to ever go to college. He talks about he was at Troy State University and was up there a year before he even knew that he was majoring in education with a major in mathematics. So when he graduated from Troy, his coach there suggested that he come up to Haleyville and interview for a job. My dad had been raised in Prattville, Alabama. He had never heard of Haleyville. But they put him on a bus in Prattville. It took him 8 hours to get to Haleyville. And he came up here and he said that the moment he stepped off the bus, he realized there was something special about this place. And so from there, he went on to become an assistant coach here and later the head coach. And as I said, they had a tremendous collection of athletes that allowed them to win a lot of ball games, and that instilled a lot of confidence in my dad. He went from there to coach at Samford University. He followed Bobby Bowden as the coach there, and then served 25 years as the executive director of the Alabama High School Athletic Association. It was there that he probably was involved in the most eventful things, or some of the most eventful things of his career and even the state of Alabama. It became his job shortly after he became executive director to desegregate the all-black high school sports association and the all-white high school sports association. But my dad never withered or blinked from that. The confidence he had gained from doing things like beating Russellville at Haleyville allowed him to have the confidence that he could desegregate the all-black and all-white sports associations in the state of Alabama, and in fact, that happened without a hitch. My dad said that it was really the easiest thing he ever had to do because in sports, if an athlete can run fast, jump high, score touchdowns, make baskets, score goals, then it doesn't matter to people what color they are. All that matters to them is that they perform and that they win and that they do it the right way. But this community had a tremendous impact on him, and the men that played for him had a tremendous impact on him. Up until the time that he died 4 years ago, his players from Haleyville, 50 years after the time they had played for him, would load up from time to time and come all the way down to Montgomery to have lunch with him. Now, you can say that's because he impacted their life, and I'm sure he did. But I think more than that, it speaks to the character of those men that 50 years after they played for a coach were willing to take times out of their schedules to come and have lunch with him, spend time with him, and renew old friendships.
My name is Barbara Arnold Posey, and I want to take you back to the year of 1948 when I was in the 5th grade at Haleyville Elementary School. there was a group of Shriners in town that were very active in our city, and they had the desire to start a high school band. Dr. Theo Jackson was a chiropractor, and he was a great trumpet player. And he went to the bank with other members and signed a note to finance it. The band was started with Dr. George Taylor coming to direct, and he supervised the ordering of the uniforms and the instruments. But we could not play. The only two songs we knew were I Love You Truly, and that did not sound too well at a football halftime show. Neither did any of the other songs that we had learned. So as time passed, he left, and we got a wonderful band director named K.K. Hennessy, who later went to the University of Alabama. And under his leadership, we learned John Philip Sousa marches, and we did precision drills at halftime of the football games to Stars and Stripes Forever, or Simple Fidelis, or Washington Post. And we made a name for ourselves. We were a band that was 120 strong. We were invited to many occasions. We marched in the parade, Strawberry Festival in Coleman, in the Memphis Cotton Carnival, halftime at college games, and many other things. And we also competed in the district and the state competition. In 1952, we won more first chair medals at state competition than any band in Alabama. A unique thing about our band was that in concert season, the football players played in the band. Johnny Posey was an outstanding running back, and he was the #1 clarinet player in the state of Alabama. And we also had a player named Tommy Tillman who got a scholarship to Alabama, and he played in the band. So that was something unique to the 50s. Another thing that was unique was we did a different band show every Friday night, not the same one like they do now. And from there, we also had a pep band that played at events that were housed where there was not enough space for the entire band. So the pep band would play at basketball games, at proms, and that type of thing. The band continues. If we drew a graph, we would see where the membership would be up and down and up and down. But I'm thankful to say today that we have a band that is 100 and plus strong. They are wonderful. Our majorettes compete with any. Our uniforms compare with the University of Alabama. The majorettes were designed, their uniforms were designed by the same person. We don't get enough recognition. But there's one thing I would like to say. As a sport, we have a coach and rules to abide by. As a band member, we had a leader and rules to abide by. We could never be late. We could never chew gum. We always had to be in full dress uniform or we would receive demerits. So not only do you get supervision in other sports, but you also get it in the band. In closing, I would like to say that a football game without a band is like a baseball game without a hot dog. And I can't imagine going to a football game and not hearing the national anthem, the fight song, and the alma mater played. I just think it's something that is so traditional, and it's something that we carry with us throughout our life. I'm pleased to say that we have a wonderful school, great facilities, and it's a wonderful place to raise your children. Thank you.
Well, came here in '68 from the University of North Alabama, which was Florence State then. My wife and I took jobs here. I was a PE teacher and a coach, and my wife was an English teacher, and we thought that this was going to be a good place for us to be. It's a good community, and the school's always had good background and a lot of good people here in Haleyville, Alabama. And for a number of years, I did a lot of coaching. In addition to teaching in the classroom, I did a lot of coaching. And coached football and boys and girls basketball, boys and girls track, boys and girls cross country. Had a lot of success because we had wonderful kids who were dedicated with the sports here at Haleyville High School.
Who is your biggest hero in Haleyville athletics?
My biggest hero in Haleyville athletics is Brady Sherrill.
And tell us why. Why do you like Brady? What about him?
Because he's smart and he's talented on sports, and that's how I want to be when I get to high school.
Tell about your best memory of being the ball boy.
I think what helped me the most being a ball boy was when I got fired, which showed me that I needed to work harder, and it really just helped me get closer with the Haleyville football athletics.
What is it like growing up in a small town? Athletics is so important.
I used to live in Hoover, and you only got to play one sport. So now when you get to Haleyville, it's a lot more fun because you can play 3 sports.
Who is your biggest hero in life?
My biggest hero in life is my mom, because she just helps me with sports and academics.
That's nice. How important is athletics to you?
Athletics is not as important as academics, but athletics is important. But God comes first, then school, then sports.
All right, you're good.
My name's Judd Williams. I'm the assistant band director at Haleyville High School and also the middle school band director. I have gone through a long journey to return to this school system. I didn't intend on being a band director out of high school, and went into journalism in college, and after graduation had found myself in retail management, of all things. Just kind of stumbled into it and found I really liked it and enjoyed it, and never really pursued my journalism degree that much. Through all those years, I was always helping out here. My father had become the band director here the year I graduated high school at Meek, which is across the county in Arley. And his father had quite suddenly gotten very ill with a stroke and passed away shortly after that. And he lived in Ash Ridge and had a farm with a lot of cattle. So my dad was driving across the county every day from Arley to Ash Ridge to take care of the cattle and his mother. And the Haleyville band director job happened to come open. Rick Whitmire had been here for 9 or 10 years, I think, and had done a very good job. And but it came open, and they called my father, Ken, and asked if he was interested. And never expected him to say yes to that, but he did. So the next thing you know, his commute has been made much more purposeful. He's able to stop at the farm on the way in and on the way back from school here. He was about 18 years into his teaching career at the time, and had been phenomenally successful at Meek where he was. He'd been the Alabama Bandmaster Association state president, the Music Educators Association state president. Had already accomplished a great deal. So when he came here, I was a little bit irritated at him. And he asked me to come help teach the first band camp he had here. And I thought, that's not going to be too fun, because they're used to a certain way of doing things, and we're used to a certain way of doing things, and they may not mesh very well. And plus, being from the little county school, we were usually kind of envious of all the things that Haleyville had that we didn't. So our goal was always just to outwork the big city school. So that's the way country folks think sometimes, I guess. So I walk in the first day of camp, and he introduces me to his drum major, and I said, hi. I said, I hope you're ready to work. And we got out on the field, and Dad left for a few minutes and let me run things. And I insulted this drum major pretty profoundly. I accused her of not giving good vocal commands, and I told the band if they couldn't come up with better leadership than that, then we weren't going to get a lot accomplished. Well, that was the last time I ever had to say that, and she turned into one of the best drum majors he ever had. And the school has had several fine drum majors that led bands here, but she did extremely well. And later on, I fell in love with her, and she came to go to college where I was later, and we dated and have now been married for 20 years. So my father retired here in 2007, I believe, and had a lot of great success. The groups here were at times, I believe, some of the best he ever had. There were so many logistics involved in how he brought the community together with this program. With more resources, the city here is very fundamental in how they help support the band program, and he in turn was very open and aggressive about getting outside the walls of the school, not just taking the band on competitions to all over the Southeast, but making sure the community here was rewarded and appreciated for how they supported the band itself. He did concerts and parades and all kinds of things that a lot of programs won't bother with. And he made sure that the community was connected to the band and vice versa. He did concerts at churches and did fundraisers in unconventional ways, and just a lot of ways that I think we need to probably revisit. He saw the need for the community to be involved in the band and not just the band be something they see on Friday night. And I've tried to remind myself of that as I begin my teaching career.
My name's Michael Humphreys. I went to Haleyville. I live in Haleyville, Alabama. I went to Haleyville C schools. I have been associated with the school since I graduated school in 1989. While I was in school, I played like B-team baseball, and it just was so much fun just being on a team with a bunch of guys. So you just enjoy each other's company, and it's just like a band of brothers. It's just so good when you win, and you just hate it though when you lost. You didn't really make the plays like you needed to make the plays to win the game. On Fridays, like being a football manager, you just pretty much had the responsibilities of being sure the football team was ready to play a football game, like taking coolers to the field, just making sure the field was set up for the pregame and stuff, and going to pep rallies and stuff. Making sure that Friday night was going to be a success. Another thing, I was in school. I was in the Haleyville High School Roaring Lion Band. That was always a fun part about Friday footballs, because you got to perform before. At halftime, the games and stuff, and put on the performance of halftime and just do your showmanship in the band. Yes, I agree. Everybody should participate in sports or be a part of the band. Be a fan of sports. But we just all need to show good sportsmanship as you you walk along in the world. There's something about being in sports is it builds character and teaches you to be like a man, be like a young lady, or that you should be on and off the court, and because people do look up to you. In this world today, you're gonna see people who are trying to be the best people in the world, but some people just don't live up to that ability about being good athletes and stuff. They don't show good sportsmanship on and off the court. But the ones that do, that's the ones that you want to see be successful in championships. In 2009, I got to go and witness Haleyville winning its first baseball championship in Montgomery, Alabama, at Riverwalk Stadium. And I won't take none for that.
My name is Bo Culver. I'm the athletic director and the head football coach at Haleyville High School in Haleyville, Alabama. Athletics are huge to me. They're a huge part of the way I grew up, a huge part of who I am today, and just, you know, being part of a team, part of a community of brothers, of sisters that bond together, compete for one common goal is something that's just there's not many substitutes for. Myself personally, you know, I grew up without having a lot as far as materialistic things, and so athletics was something that I could always go to as just an out for that, as something to where when you step on the field, you're on an even playing field with everybody else. It doesn't matter how much money you have, how little money you have, what your status is in the community or anything like that. It's just when you step on the field, whatever the field of athletics is, it's about playing the game, competing, and doing that. For us here at Haleyville, we don't foster a win at all costs attitude. We do want to compete. We want to be competitive. We get after it. We work our kids hard, train our kids hard, and push our kids to be successful. But what athletics does so much more than that is teaches us about life, teaches us discipline, teaches us character and work ethic, and how to overcome adversity, because no matter how great you are, there's going to be some adversity that sets in when you're an athlete. Athletics teach you how to push through that adversity and come out on the other side. I do not really feel that. I do feel at times, and then not at times, that too much pressure is being placed on our athletes today. Really, honestly, I think that it's good pressure when that comes. I mean, in life, as an adult, as a dad, and as a husband, there's pressure comes on my life at times. I mean, I have to understand that I'm responsible for two other beings in this world, that God's going to hold me accountable to how I take care of them, how I protect them, and the way I do things there. And athletics prepares kids for that kind of pressure. I do think that we live in a world today that sometimes minimizes pressure and wants us to handle everybody with just a soft side, and that's just not reality. I think athletics can teach us how to handle tough times and how to get through those tough times. Being here at Haleyville, I am not from here. My wife is from here. Us being allowed to come back here has been nothing but a great opportunity. I can say that here it's uniquely different from anywhere I've ever been. The community here is so supportive of athletics. It is so involved in athletics and wants athletics to be so successful. More than that, I really think they want us to put a good product on the field. And what I mean by product is just putting those great men and women of character out there and competing and winning. And like I said, I can't say enough of just about how much community support we have here, how much tradition there is here, how much it means to be part of this community and to be from here. I mean, I envy that at times, that some of our coaches on our staff or my wife even are able to be from here and be able to kind of pour what they learned as an athlete at Haleyville into our current athletes now. I do the same thing with experience for myself, but it really is. It's something special to be from here, to be known as being from here, and also to be able to kind of turn that over, to kind of pay it forward. The kids that are here now, are working and playing for coaches that have been here before, and that's huge. As far as me personally, I have a great relationship with one of my high school coaches specifically. He's a big reason why I do this today. I did not start out in education or athletics in college. I started out as preparing to be in public communications. And this was something that God kind of kept bringing me back to, and really it was a part of the relationship that I had with one of my coaches in high school that just, he meant the world to me. I was able to pour into my life, not just in athletics, but just as a man, to kind of show me what a man should be, what a man should be like. And then as I first started in this business, I was able to work for two men that were great men of faith, great men of character, and really showed me that more than about winning, it's about getting that young man from point A to point B, not being a transactional coach, which is, I'm going to do this for you so you can do this for me, but being a transformational coach, where we're literally trying to change men and women's lives. We're trying to get them from A to B to C to D and so forth and so on. And that's what makes this special to me, is that I can look back now, and I'm still fairly young, but I can look back now and see guys that I've coached early in my career that are getting out of college and becoming men and women, and just starting families and doing that, and to see them and them talking about times that we had and moments that we've been through, and just things that what that taught them that is now serving them in their adult life. Because as much as we want our athletes to be successful in athletics, there's a small percentage of them that are going to play all in college. And even outside of that, there's a real small percentage that are going to play professional. And even if you do that, you're playing for a short term. So athletics is so much more for the life. You got to find something outside of that makes you happy. But these resources that you gain from athletics, these principles that you learn from athletics, can really foster a lifelong learning atmosphere for you and for yourself. A question that gets brought to my attention today a lot, especially being a football coach, is the safety of things and concussions in sports and things like that. Myself, I believe that life is a risk. Getting up and getting in my truck and driving here today, I take a risk that I'm not going to be in an accident, and that's actually, statistically speaking, you can look at different studies, and statistics say what statistics want to say a lot of times, but football actually is lower down on the list than what some people might think as far as concussions and leading that. Now, because of the NFL and its prominence, it gets brought up, but wholeheartedly, I think athletics is well worth any risk that comes from it, just because of the lessons learned and things like that. My kids, if they grow up, and I would hope they participate in athletics, I would encourage them to do that. I'm not going to make them, but I would highly encourage that, once again, just because of the relationships that are built, the camaraderie that's built, and just the physical activity they get. Obesity is something that we struggle with in our country today. The more physical active kids are, the less likely they are to be sitting at home on the couch and just eating tater chips or whatever. And so being physical and getting out and competing is something that can limit that situation, limit the risk of diabetes and things like that. Just once again, what kids gain from a team is we've talked several times about camaraderie. But there's something to be said to knowing that you're heading towards a common goal. Obviously, in the workplace here, no matter what the workplace is, the business world, whatever it is, that you're working with a team. Your company's your team. Your business leaders are your team. Your school is your team. And if you can't learn to be part of a team, to contribute in your role on that team, and just caring about the team being successful, not just the individual, it's going to be hard to be really successful in life.
When I came here in '82, a friend of mine, Conrad Nix, was here. We were together in Warner Robins, Georgia. But the thing that I saw in Haleyville, it reminded me a lot of my hometown of Sevierville, Tennessee, Sevier County High School. The people in the town really surround themselves with the sports of girls and the boys. Same way with the school. It's just one big family-like, and that's one thing that I saw that impressed me about Haleyville was the community and how it supported the sports.
I'm Bill Loden. I currently live in Madison, Alabama, but I grew up in Haleyville, Alabama, back in the 60s and early 70s. Back in those days, Haleyville was somewhat isolated, I guess, from the rest of the state. We're 70 miles north of Birmingham, about 60 miles south of Florence, and about 80 miles from Huntsville. So we were surrounded by other small towns. But growing up here, it was an incredible experience, and sports was a big part of that. But back in those days, in the 60s, one of the things that was, one of the issues that was going on was race relations, and there were a lot of problems in Birmingham and other cities around the South. But again, we were pretty much insulated from that. Now, in the later 60s, when I got into high school, we did integrate, and the schools across the South did, but we really didn't feel much of an impact here. There weren't that many black students, and to the best of my knowledge, all of the students that came in, it was pretty much seamless. Nothing happened. There were no protests. The two boys that were in our class, Willie and William, they both played football also, very good athletes, and they were just like, part of the gang. But football, again, here in Haleyville was a very, I guess the fall was a very exciting time. It's what everyone was thinking about all summer long, leading up to it, what kind of team we were going to have and those kind of things. And it was just an exciting time to live here, and I felt very blessed to have grown up here. But I was not a very good athlete as a child. I was kind of skinny, and I wasn't a very good student either until something happened in my life. In about 1965, during the middle of the space program, I needed to do a book report, and I found a new book on Wernher von Braun. I read the book, did the book report, but it inspired me. And for the first time in my life, I actually considered the possibility of going to college. And that became my new dream, to go to college. But one of the things that was a roadblock, my family did not have the money to send me to school. I was living with my widowed grandmother and an uncle. So I really didn't have an opportunity, at least the funds that I could see, to go. And I was trying to figure out how I could go to college. And it occurred to me that if I could get a football scholarship, I could get into college and get my education and go to work for NASA. And so when I was I guess I was probably 13, I made the announcement to my family that I was going to get a football scholarship and go play football and get a college education. Now, I had never played a down of football in my life in actual pads or and a helmet. So, and I wasn't a particularly good student either. So my family, they got quite a chuckle out of that. It was a little bit painful to go through, but they pretty much discounted it, and with good reason. But I set my mind to doing that, and over the next few years, even though at the start I was, again, a skinny kid, I started filling out, and I started playing football and basketball and running track, and I got my first opportunity to actually play to start in a game my sophomore year in high school here at Haleyville, when one of our defensive ends was injured, and I took his place. And from that point on, I started all throughout my career here at Haleyville on both sides of the ball, playing tackle. And as a senior, I moved from defensive end to linebacker. And things were going pretty well, and I was starting to get some attention from some of the colleges my senior year. And I actually went down to Tuscaloosa a couple of times and visited with Bear Bryant, which was an incredible opportunity. Of course, growing up in Alabama, everyone worshipped Bear Bryant, really. He was an incredible man, and so I was very interested in playing for him. But he ended up running out of scholarships before he got to me. But I did receive a call from a school over in South Carolina. Some of you may know it's Clemson University. At the time, Hootie Ingram was the head coach over there. and they had received some film on me, and not really sure where the film, how it got there. It's possible it was my head coach here at Haleyville, Coach Beasley, or it's even possible maybe Bear Bryant, he knew Hootie. They had both played at Alabama. And it's possible he sent the film up there. But again, I'm not really sure how they got the film. But the next thing I know, they offered me a scholarship. And I ended up with a 4-year scholarship to Clemson University. Now, I was still trying to work on my NASA dream of becoming a rocket scientist. And later, when I got out of school, when I finally graduated, I ended up graduating from Mississippi State. There weren't any real jobs at NASA at the time. They were kind of in a low period, so I went into the petroleum industry as a field engineer and did that for several years. And I was laid off from that later in the late 1980s, around 86 or 87 time frame. And I ended up in Huntsville, Alabama, looking for work. The city was growing. The space program was recovering from the Challenger accident, and they were growing. And I was looking for work in Huntsville, and really wasn't having very much luck. And one day, I visited, one Sunday, my family and I, we visited a church there in Huntsville. And but again, I was thinking, well, we're probably going to move on. But on Wednesday night, a member of the congregation came to visit us and welcomed us to the community and welcome us to the church and that kind of thing. And I invited the gentleman in, and we got to talking. And I found out that he was from South Carolina. And it also turned out that he was he had graduated from the University of Clemson. And so we hit it off pretty well. And of course, I told him that I was not sure. I was still looking for work in Huntsville and not sure if I was going to stay. I may end up moving back to Louisiana or some other city. And so we ended our conversation. He went home, and about 30 minutes later, he called me up and said, "You wouldn't be interested in going to work at NASA, would you?" And I had to resist the urge of screaming yes. But anyway, he worked for a contractor there. He had worked for NASA for many years and had retired, and he was working for a NASA contractor on the safety and mission assurance contract, and they were looking for someone in safety and reliability. So though I had no experience, because I had gone to school at Clemson, he got me an interview. I went in, I got the job, and I ended up spending the next 16 years working at NASA as a safety engineer on the space shuttle program. It was an incredible opportunity. But again, without the football connection in there, my life would have probably been much different than it was. But again, it was just an incredible experience, and growing up here in Haleyville gave me a foundation that has served me well throughout my life as I've traveled around the country, and it's really been quite an experience. But football and basketball and baseball and all those sports here in Haleyville are just at least back in that day, it was the center of town activity.
Hello, my name's Charles Frazier. Born, reared here in Haleyville, lived here all my life. One of the most important things in my life, of course, has been having the opportunity to enjoy Haleyville, the Haleyville sports scene, from childhood days even to now. And the most important thing, or probably the most crucial thing that got me involved in it, was family. My dad played football here at Haleyville, football and baseball, back in the mid to late 40s. And as a youngster growing up, there was this thin red book at home called the Havala, our school yearbook, come to find out. And there was pictures of my dad in there in football and baseball uniforms. Not only that, there were pictures of the fathers of several of my classmates and friends, and their dads were teammates of mine. So it just started out as a family thing. As I grew up and grew older, of course, grew up in the time that Coach Scott and all his great teams here at Haleyville had a lot of success, and it was very important, very important part of our community. And I just grew up with that excitement and with that being able to attend the games and seeing the guys that played, go to church with them, see them around town from time to time, and just always thought that I'd like to be one of those guys when I grow up. And very fortunate, had the opportunity to do that. As I said, my father played for Coach Jimmy Wood back in the mid and late 40s. I started football when I was coming through school. School football started in spring training of the 6th grade. And we were part of the junior high team in the 7th, 8th, and 9th grades. So I always loved playing backyard football and flag football and a little backyard tackle football. But once we got playing school football and playing, going through the drills and the rigors and in particular the conditioning, it was a different thing. But I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed the camaraderie of my teammates. Those guys that so many of them that started out with me in the 6th grade on that spring football are still my best friends today, and all the different places and things that we've done and places we've had to live and get separated and whatnot. But the bonds that we made during those times were just something it's something you can't buy. It was a wonderful experience as I look back on it. Now I will admit the practices weren't that much fun all the time. Every now and then, there would be something humorous happen, but most of the time they were pretty tough. But every afternoon when that was it, coaches told you to hit the locker room. It was a feeling. I made it. I did it. I made it through that, and became a better person for doing so. I was very fortunate while I was playing ball here in Haleyville that I had some outstanding coaches, really good gentlemen. They were excellent administrators, teachers, and really good coaches. And I'm forever grateful that I had that opportunity. First one was Coach Gilbert Ayers, just truly a great man, tall, gray-headed, just a very imposing figure, but a true gentleman and someone that I've always admired. As far as my high school career is concerned, we had a gentleman come in named Bob Haggard. He had just won a Class 4A state championship at West End High School in Birmingham. And somehow the powers that be here talked him into coming up here to good old Winston County and becoming our coach. And when he did, he brought a completely different thought process, completely different process, completely different way of thinking about football, something that we had not been accustomed to. And it was because of his experience in the Birmingham area in the late 60s and early 70s. It was quite high school football was going through a really intense, popular time down there in Birmingham at that time. Had a tremendous number of really good coaches and really good programs. And he that's what he wanted to bring up here was that intensity. But it was some really good experiences. Haleyville's always been one of those places where it's like a lot of other small towns. High school Friday nights, just really important. All the things that involved, all the people that get involved in it. Cheerleaders. Been married to a cheerleader for 35 years. Had 2 daughters that were cheerleaders here at Haleyville. So, all of that is very important. We've always had outstanding band directors, and our bands have always been willing to play that fight song time and time again, even maybe when we didn't give them a good reason to on the field. But just the spirit and enthusiasm people in Haleyville around their sports programs, and it's not just football. It's been basketball, and then of course, while I was just after I graduated, the beginning of the girls programs. And we've had a tremendous amount of success over the years with the girl athletes, and they have done a great job and been a lot of fun to watch, and brought a lot of good things to our community. But as I end up, it goes back to family, and I think of all the families like mine where my dad played, and then I played, and then 2 brothers played, and we all played the same position. And I think back of some of the other families, the Bates brothers and the Mize brothers, the Israel brothers. So many of them that I either played with or watched in years before I played or afterwards, and how important it was for those families. And then of course the expanded family that you end up with, those teammates, those guys that you really play for. It might be that pride in that red jersey, but when it comes down to it, when you're down there on the field in the wet grass and the dirt, and maybe things aren't going your way, you actually play for those guys that are getting the huddle with you, guys that stand shoulder to shoulder with you. That's who you really play for. And I'm as grateful as I can be that I have those wonderful memories. And I think so many other people in this community for decades and decades have those same memories.
My name is Jerry Jackson. I'm an attorney in Haleyville, Alabama, and I grew up here heavily inspired by sports, and played football for the local high school in 4 years, and had some of the most great coaches that's ever been. Specifically, Bubba Scott was the coach whenever I was playing, and he later on became the head coach at Howard College and became head of the Alabama High School Athletic Association, and served in that position longer than anybody did. Was inducted into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame, and when he was inducted, had the largest group of people there for his induction of anybody that's ever been inducted in the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. Sports are important in a community the size of this one, because it tends to make the people unified. In the days when we had really, really good football teams, and we still do, the community was absolutely dedicated to the success of the football team. It was one of those things that you could do any number of things. You always played football. I remember very vividly whenever I started through the 7th grade, you got to switch from the elementary school to the high school, and we had a coach by the name of Jimmy Wood. And he took us all out on the lawn at the high school and give us his, "If you don't play football, you're not an American" speech. And most everybody was ready to suit up at that time. And I dare say most of those people that heard that did at some point in time participate in the football program at Haleyville High School. There have been many players from this city that have done well and gone on to many, many things. Some of them played high school, college football. We even had one pro football player from here. His name was Ben Smith. He played for the University of Alabama and then subsequently played for the Green Bay Packers and the Washington Redskins and the Chicago Bears. And he caught a pass with one hand in the Rose Bowl at one time. His brother was another outstanding football player, and he played for the Alabama Crimson Tide, was captain of the team in the late 20s, and holds a record that will never be broken. He won more varsity letters than any other person ever in the history of the University of Alabama, and that was something like 11 or 12 varsity letters. We also have one All-American football player from here. His name was Curtis Martin Jr. Everybody called him Buck. He played at Georgia Tech and was a All-American in the early 50s. Holds an SEC record till this day where he caught 4 touchdown passes against Auburn in one ball game. That record has been tied since then by Terry Beasley, who played for Auburn, and he caught 4 touchdown passes in one game. We had many, many people that were great, great people coming through the program. Coach Bubba Scott, who was one of the finest gentlemen I've ever known in my life, and I was privileged to play for him. He became head coach in 1953. And his first 2 or 3 years were not really as good as he wanted it to be. But his last 5 years, he had a record in 50 ball games of 47-2-1. And he went on and coached at Samford University. It was Howard College at the time. And as I said, he became the head of the Alabama High School Athletic Association. You look up to the ball players in your lifetime, as I did with the All-American. When I was an 11-year-old boy, he would come and take me swimming in the summertime when he was here and working out to go back to Georgia Tech. The role that the coaches play can never be overemphasized. Coach Scott was one of those kind of people that he made you want to be better, and he had a saying always: a quitter never wins and a winner never quits. And the stadium here in Haleyville, Alabama is named for him, and on the night when it was named for him, there was a marble monument unveiled that night, and I stood and watched him when he read the inscription, and the inscription which I'd like to share with you. Those who stand and read these words of tribute do so while admiring the craftsmanship of the stone mason. The mason lovingly shaped the rough stone and brought it to stand tall and proud. He sought to bring character into its steps and to polish it into something unique and remarkable. Coach Herman Bubba Scott employed these same acts of love and care as he, like the stonemason who helped make this stone, he helped hundreds of young men to develop strength of character and self-esteem while polishing each one into something unique and remarkable. They carry his special craftsmanship into the world, and their lives stand as a tribute to him. One time had a conversation with a person who did not grow up in this area, and I asked him to what did he attribute the industry in this area, and he said, and unhesitatingly, he said, Bubba Scott. And I said, how do you figure that? He said, well, the people who played football for Bubba Scott never believed they could ever be defeated in anything. And I think that's probably a pretty good description. When I was young, my father got killed when I was 13. Coach Scott became my father figure. And it was because of his influence that I was able to work my way through undergraduate school and through law school and become a lawyer. And a lot of what I am today, I owe to him. And that is true of sports in general if you have the right people running them, because they are so important to teach you teamwork and that you can go on, that if you are tired, you can still put one foot in front of the other. Those are the things that sports is uniquely qualified to do for a person as they're growing up.